Sorry for the new intro music. Hutchler ruined it. Now I can't unhear it. He did, however, say that if he can get 10 new follows on his next stream, he will release a video of him dancing to the previous song in the aforementioned outfit. Anyway, on with today's topic. Now, I recently did a video explaining weapon expertise and the scaling, and like, is it worth it, and how much you actually get from it. And in this video I said that some exotic weapons, namely the ones that don't have a damage talent, might not be worthwhile actually investing expertise into them. Now, I have completed my testing, and it's not as thorough as I would like, just because I hit one serious bump in the road. And although my previous statement of it not being worth it is kind of correct, and I used the word kind of very loosely, it's also completely and hilariously wrong. Although the premise of what I was working of is correct, because essentially adding in expertise adds all weapon damage. All weapon damage is, although technically a multiplier, it's a very simple multiplier. They all add together rather. So if you've got 15% here, 15% there, 10% here, 5% there, they all add together and give you a new multiplier in which your base weapon damage, depending on the weapon that you're using, is multiplied by to give you your new weapon damage, which is why when you look into your stat screen, you will have your weapon damage. Now, this is kind of gets convoluted simply just because when you look at your weapon damage, for example, the weapon damage on the build that I'm using now is like 130,000. At no point do I shoot something and hit for 130,000. It's like 600k, 700k, like 500k, like minimum, I believe, and up to 1.1 mil, depending. That's just when I'm using the AR. However, that's simply just because multipliers, and to go into this as to why I'm wrong, we need to look at what multipliers exactly and what it is they are doing. Now, on screen is a base formula for FAMAS and Eagle Bearer. Their base damage, their RPM, mag size, reload, optimal range, magazine damage, their burst DPS, their sustained DPS, etc, etc. Below that, in the yellow and orange numbers, is again their base damage. This is a total of 17.02% difference between their base damage. In a numerical value, this is 7,522 damage. The next number along the right, where it's 63,000 and 73,950, this is still a 17.02% difference between them. All I have done here is just assumed we have no other value other than perfect glass cannon. So it's a 0.3 multiplier. So although this is still a 17.02% difference between them, in a numerical value, this is now 10,756. So where the difference between them was 7.5k, it's now approaching 10 points. Well, it's over 10.7k. This is simply just because larger number with the same multiplier will get more benefit from that multiplier. The issue is now simply just due to RPM. See, RPM acts as a direct separate multiplier to DPS. So if we then calculated DPS and pushed this forward, although we would get a larger difference between them, we would still end up with the same percentage difference between the actual two values. This is kind of shown by that next percentage, 143%. This shows that although we have got a 17.02% difference between them for both, we have increased both by a multiplier of 30 or 0.3, depending on how you want to look at it. But the overall difference between them now, going from 7.5 to 10.7, the overall difference here is 43%. So although we've added in a 30% multiplier, we're getting a difference of 43%. What this means is, in terms of expertise, is eventually the scale will run out. Now, this is something I didn't want to get into too much detail with in a previous video, my weapon expertise video, but I ended up going on like a 5-minute tangent with it anyway, simply just because I didn't want to like publish my findings and without like concrete evidence to support this. I do have evidence to support this. However, my thinking was we're potentially already at the point with the expertise we have of where this scale will start to run dry. Which is why I wanted to do further testing, because if people have put like weapons like Eagle Bearer, Bullet King, even Capacitor is actually one of them. Any exotic weapon that doesn't have a damage talent is eventually going to fall under this. The problem is I vastly underestimated at what point this will actually happen. So, on screen now is a very rudimentary graph of what I'm trying to explain. The orange dots are Foamath, the blue is Eagle Bearer. As you can see, they're pretty close on DPS, but eventually they get to a certain point where Eagle Bearer at 40 damage can't do any more, and then Killer on Foamath takes over and is able to push it just that little bit further. This is without expertise. My thinking was, due to the fact that most talents are a multiplier of some sort, that with expertise, although this would push Eagle Bearer higher, it would also push the capabilities of Killer to be able to do so much more. Eventually meaning that if you put, or directly compared, an expertise 20 Eagle Bearer to an expertise 20 Foamath, you would get essentially something that looked like this. Now, previously Eagle Bearer went up to 40, now it's doing 50. However, the killer dots, where they both sort of stopped being in tandem with each other, we only got like an extra 2 dots, whereas now we have like an extra like 10 near enough. I think 9, I believe. This is actually the case. This will eventually happen. However, I thought in my tiny human puny mind that this would happen like around expertise 15, 16, 20 for definite. So I started testing. Now the first thing I needed to do was directly compare a Foamath against another weapon that also allowed me to use a damage talent that was quite identical to something I wanted to test, Eagle Bearer. Now as you can see, all the percentages are the exact same. The top part of the graph is the weapons at expertise 0, and the bottom part is expertise 20. And as you can see, hopefully between the Foamath and Sig at 0 is 138, 108, 91.9, 91.92, and then again at expertise 20 it's 138.2, 108.8, 91.92, 91.92. So both had killer. The only difference between them is just the simple fact of their base values are different with different RPMs. So logical conclusion, no matter how much expertise you put into these, there will always be that level of difference. Essentially meaning, so far, my theory is correct. However, when I did this for Eagle Bearer, I got the exact same results. So obviously again, top is 0, bottom is 20. As you can hopefully see, the damage numbers are going to be slightly different, but the percentage values between them are pretty much the exact same. 138.2, 121.3, and then 87.06, 82.43. And then for expertise 20, yeah, exact same. Which didn't actually make sense, because if you got a higher value, the multiplier should be doing more. So what was going on? Either I'm testing this incorrectly, or it's not working the way I think it should be. As we've already shown at the start of the video, the higher the base value, the more a multiplier should be doing. So if we're increasing our base value regardless, other multipliers should be doing more. We should essentially be seeing some form of power creep. So I thought maybe it's hidden in the decimals. Now, despite the fact that there are a lot of decimals, yeah, they're still the exact same. Now, the way in which the game works, it will only calculate up to 100th. So we have, for example, 138.2 tenth point, and then 0 hundredth. Better example would be the first EB, 87.06. The 0 is the 10th, the 6th is the 100th. That is the furthest the game will calculate. So if it's not in the first 2 decimals, despite the fact that even if there was a difference, unless it changes the first 2 decimals, the game isn't going to give a crap. You're still going to get the exact same damage, even if the 3rd decimal might be a 1 on one of them and then a 4 on the other, because it's going to round down. If it was a 5, it would round up. So therefore, changing the 100th decimal, it's not going to change a damn thing. So I was like, well, this theory mathematically and logically has to be correct, but at what point do I actually get this change? So then I had the brilliant idea, because I've done Dod-Foamath versus EB, got my result. I've done my Dod-Foamath versus Sig, got my result. What if I then get those 2 results and then basically cross-reference them? Will that give me or show the change in which I'm essentially assuming is there? I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I eventually found it, but I didn't find it in the place that I was expecting. So, the end result here is kind of weird. And here it is. This is gonna sound weird, but I basically just calculated everything again and then just basically upped everything until I got the damage difference. Now I'm aware this is quite small and zoomed out, so for you mobile users, I do apologise. Now some of you might have noticed something very weird about this already, and that is just how much damage we're actually doing. We're doing like 3 mil a shot. It's kind of ridiculous. And I'll get to that in a minute. However, the overall value difference here is actually quite stupid. So if we look at this part close up, a lot of the values seem pretty much quite normal, other than the fact that they are bloated to hell. However, without expertise, the overall difference between all 3 comparatively is 94.72 for headshot. For body shot, it's 89.69. Well, hey, 69. However, when we put it to expertise 20, the difference goes from 94.72 to 94.7, and then 89.69 to 89.68. Ta-da, we finally changed 1/100%. Now, like I said, some of you might have noticed something quite different, and that is quite simply just due to the all-weapon damage value. Yeah, we're at like 7.2, which means we have 600% all weapon damage on top of what we already got. Typically most builds will have a 100% all weapon damage. We're now rocking 700. Essentially, I'm telling you, don't put your Eagle Bearer past expertise 600, which is kind of dumb. So, I am pleased to announce that I was right. You will eventually get to a point of where expertise on things like Eagle Bearer, Bighorn, Capacitor, I can't actually think of any others at the moment, will actually have a negative effect on your build. Basically any weapon really that doesn't have a damage talent will have a negative effect on your build. The part I wasn't counting on is just how far down the line that actually is. And I very much doubt we'll ever be able to get to like expertise 700. I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like having 33 million DPS is kind of a bit ridiculous. Yeah. So, yeah. Moral of the story, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put your Eagle Bearer past expertise 600. And good luck, have fun, don't die, I suppose.